Rise and shine. Pour yourself a cup of coffee and tune in to Good Morning Aurora. News, weather, and really cool interviews. Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. The time is 5:57 p.m. and we are happy to be here. You are listening to and watching a special episode of Good Morning Aurora. We're going to discuss PTSD with our friends and community partners. This video is also being shared on the Facebook page of the Kane County State's Attorney's Office. You can find that on Facebook. PTSD and the criminal justice system. Our panelists tonight are Kane County Sheriff Hain, Dr. Alexandra Tsang, the Director of the Kane County Diagnostic Center, Jamie Mosser, Kane County State's Attorney, Jacob Zimmerman, Superintendent of the Kane County Veterans Assistance Commission, and Pete Olson, President of Level 6 Wellness and Operation Iraqi Freedom Combat Veteran. How are you guys doing tonight?
Great.
Good.
Thank you.
This nice sunny semi-evening. Thank you everybody for tuning in to this important discussion. So without further delay, let us begin. And thank you for joining on Facebook. PTSD is commonly associated with traumatic combat experiences by those who have served in the military, but anyone can suffer from PTSD. In this discussion, we will seek to cover four main points about PTSD. What kind of events can trigger PTSD? What signs should one look for to determine if they suffer from PTSD? How can PTSD manifest in a person, and what should people know about PTSD? All right. According to the Mayo Clinic, post-traumatic stress disorder is defined as a mental health condition that's triggered by a terrifying event, either experiencing it or witnessing it. That sounds like a pretty straightforward definition, yet we know stigma and myths persist about PTSD. All right, so we will start first with Kane County Sheriff Hain. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
All right, good to see you again.
Good to be seen.
So let's talk about PTSD among our residents.
Yeah, so the residents that are most marginalized, and my mind goes immediately to those who are, and I'm pointing at our Kane County Jail right out the window to my left, right behind Pete's back. And our drug counselor in the jail that started with us just a little less than 4 years ago coined a great phrase to me even this year after he's been working inside our facility for 3.5 years. And he said, Sheriff, everybody in your custody has committed an offense. They've done something stupid that got themselves into trouble and justice involved. But every single one of those people are also a victim. And of course, if you're even more antiquated in law enforcement career thought than I am, and you sit back and you roll your eyes and say, what kind of woke statement is that, right? But when you think about it and you actually listen to the folks in custody and you listen to the therapy that they're going through, even the most intensive therapy that we have, every single one of them has a very core common component. And that's, whether it be the women in our custody who have been through some of the most heinous experiences a human being can think of at a very young age in life, to the men who watched, their father beat their mother, their parents commit suicide, gang involvement and drug involvement and gun involvement at a very young age. These people were traumatized from Jump Street. And so when I sat back and let that sink in, his statements about, every single one of them is a victim at some point in their life, and that's what created their criminal culture, that really hit me hard. And again, every single resident next door at the Kane County Jail has suffered severe trauma that's led them down this path.
Thank you for sharing that. Good evening, Dr. Tsang.
Good evening.
What is the KCDC, the Kane County Diagnostic Center? What's its history, and what role does it play in the Kane County court system?
KCDC was actually established around 1976, and it is very unique in that we are not a community mental health center. We are the designated psychological department who works solely for the Kane County court system. So everything we do is by court order, whether that's mandated treatment, but for the most part, the crux of what we do is give opinions to the court, the judges and the attorneys, regarding someone's fitness to stand trial, whether they were sane or insane at the time of the offense. But also a big part of what we do is offer treatment recommendations, whether that's from domestic violence or PTSD issues, juvenile court, adult court. And we also have staff on drug court, mental health court. We're not involved necessarily directly in veterans court because the VA takes that piece, but we're very involved in terms of informing the court and giving expert opinions as to the care of the defendants. What should be done rather than just incarcerating people? What are some things that could be done to prevent recidivism in a very what's considered non-traditional now way, but that's very much what Sheriff Ron Hain and State's Attorney Jamie Monser is doing, using intervention to prevent recidivism rather than incarceration.
I see. And for the listeners and the viewers as well, we do have information that work being done, by the specialty courts, specifically mental health court, which we'll detail here momentarily. State's Attorney Monser, hello.
Hello. How are you, Curtis?
I'm doing good. We're doing all right. We got water. We're having a good one tonight.
Yes, we are.
We're glad to be here, and thank you to everyone tuning in for this important discussion. Question: how does the KCDC fit into the vision of the State's Attorney's Office?
Very well, as a matter of fact. So when I campaigned and was lucky enough to be elected, what I wanted to do was reimagine how we prosecuted cases. And for us, it was individually looking at everything. When I was trained to be a prosecutor in the very beginning, it was a cookie cutter approach. You committed this crime, this is the sentence that you got. What I learned from being a prosecutor in New Orleans and from being a prosecutor here, and then being a family law attorney, being a legal aid attorney, and being a criminal defense attorney, is we were failing because we didn't look at what the people needed. We didn't look at why they were here. There's a saying that don't judge me by the chapter of my life that you walk in, because that chapter may not be the best chapter. And so as the state's attorney here in Kane County, I joined Sheriff Hain's mission already. Sheriff Hain's mission, before I was even elected, was to look at everybody, get them help so that when they left his jail, they never came back. I stole that mission because when they come to this courthouse, I want to help them so that they never come back. And so with the Diagnostic Center and having the ability to truly look at what people need versus what we're just going to make up is exactly what we need to do to stop the cycle of violence that we've had. This is more than just domestic violence where we see this. This is a learned behavior. There's this concept, and Dr. Tsang would be so much better at explaining this than me, ACEs trauma, which is adult or adolescent childhood experiences. And that goes to what Sheriff Hain said. They see the gang violence, they see gun violence, they see a parent abusing another parent. They get abused. They see a divorce. They see family members go to jail or prison. These are traumas that they're developing or that they have over time. Those are traumas that take them into our criminal justice system. And if we don't address that trauma, we're just going to see them over and over again. So the Diagnostic Center, with their ability to really delve into our cases, with the concept of how can we get them out, is a fantastic partnership that we have had for years and just can use better than we ever had before.
Good to know that. And as mentioned, we do have some great information to share shortly being done by the team. Mr. Zimmerman, hello.
Good evening.
How are you?
Good. Yourself?
I'm doing good. All right. How long have you been with the KCVAC, the Veterans Assistance Commission?
Sure. I've been the superintendent of the Veterans Assistance Commission for 9 years, and then another 2 years before that with the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs.
All right. How has mental health changed in the veteran community, and how has it historically been viewed, and are we seeing changes in the perception?
Sure. So you got to look back a long time to answer that question. So back in World War II, World War I, we called it battle fatigue or combat stress. Things like that. We didn't really understand the full effects of it. Shell shock is another term. And it's something that's developed over time today to being PTSD, right? So with that, now that we have a better understanding of the diagnosis and how to treat it, it's removing the stigma, in my opinion, making sure folks know it's okay to go get that treatment and that it's available and where to get that treatment, especially in the military veteran community.
Okay. All right. All right. Next question. We've spoken on PTSD and mental health so far from an offender law enforcement perspective. From what you've seen, are PTSD issues causing veterans to have more negative interactions with law enforcement? And if so, what key differences make their interactions potentially stronger or more poignant than those with civilians?
Sure. So that's a very interesting question. The veteran community and the law enforcement community share a very close, they're sort of cut from the same cloth, paramilitary and military. They show a close relationship there. So I've seen veterans be able to get a little bit of a break from law enforcement on that to avoid some of those negative interactions, but we have seen those negative interactions, a lot of which attribute back to combat experiences that have gone untreated after they returned home and transitioned. The Veterans Treatment Court here, established, I believe, in 2018, helps that. So we connect the veterans who have come into the criminal justice system in one way or another with resources available in my office at the state of Illinois level, as well as Hain's VA Hospital. And those folks come right to the court. Hain's is there every week. My office is there every week, right here in this building, to offer support to those veterans. So, and then again, too, we're helping to train law enforcement starting actually on Friday. The VA is coming out here to the Kane County Government Center to offer a 5-hour class on how to deal, or not deal, but strategies in helping veterans that are in crisis specific to law enforcement, and then to also offer the resources that are available at the state, local, federal level to those folks too, and to introduce them to the Veterans Court system. So we're really looking forward to that.
Great stuff. Something that we look forward to sharing come Friday. Great stuff. Mr. Olson, hello.
How are you doing, Curtis?
I'm doing good. You are the president, as mentioned, of Level 6 Wellness.
Yes, sir.
So good to meet you. Your website says it best: dangerous, taxing, and or traumatic environments. This is what the combat veteran particularly is exposed to. For those unfamiliar, what different forms of PTSD, what different forms does PTSD take for our servicemen and women?
How PTSD is kind of manifested with, in my experience, with a lot of the combat veterans and as well with law enforcement, it's a very unique thing to the individual that's kind of experiencing it, going back to their determinants of what they've gone through with their history, gang affiliation. Military is kind of a kaleidoscope of backgrounds. You have a lot of people that were gang affiliated, that came from domestic violence homes, came from broken homes, that came from a senator's son that went to, or daughter that went to an academy. You have everything and anything. And you have that range as well with PTSD and how it manifests. You have people that just have nightmares or insomnia. You have people that hypervigilant all the time in places that are unnecessary. And you have situations where it can manifest into a compulsion or some kind of unhealthy behavior, which that's even itself a broad category. You know, it can be a compulsion where they're just overeating to handle the stresses that they've had, all the way to you know, a self-destructive act, the final one, which is suicide. And it's extremely unique to the experiences that they've had. You could have 5 people experience the same thing, but you know, their backgrounds are different, how they're processing it is different, and then how they react to it is different. That's one of the tough parts of trying to treat it, is you have this, it's very customized to the individual.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. So as mentioned, at this time, we do have some numbers and data from the Kane County State's Attorney's Office 2021 annual report, which I think are very important. So we'll detail those real quick. Specifically, the mental health court. Mental illness is a significant issue in the United States. According to the National Institute on Mental Health, nearly 1 in 5 adults live with a mental illness. That's nearly 53 million Americans, according to the most recently available statistics. The Kane County State's Attorney's Office plays a significant role in helping to address mental health issues in Kane County. Appropriate medication and treatment are highly effective in treating mental illness, according to NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. As many as 90% of individuals who receive treatment experience drastically reduced symptoms and an improved quality of life. However, some individuals who suffer from mental illness refuse to be treated. When that happens, the courts and the state's attorney's office can become involved. And by the numbers, in 2021, mental health facilities in Kane County filed 160 petitions for involuntary admission, 20 petitions for involuntary administration, and so on and so forth. This information is very helpful and on the website for anyone to view. All right. So it's 6:12. I have the next question. I posed it and created it for Dr. Tsang, but I do think that it can apply to all of our respective professions. So I'd like you guys just to speak on it a little bit. So here is the question. Prior to the establishment of the KCDC, and I'm just using the acronyms because we know them. Yes. What resources would an individual suffering from mental or psychological illness have had available? So prior to, you know, we're seeing the work being done now, before.
Well, to answer that question, you have to understand that KCDC is really designed to really respond to the needs of the court system. So we're not a community mental health center where you can walk in and make an appointment. But as you are hearing, the court's needs are very high with mental health because, you know, when I get asked, what's the pathway to crime, to criminal offending? What's, in one word, what makes someone commit crimes and take on this career path of getting arrested and doing drugs and whatever? If I had to choose one word, it would be trauma. So trauma, I think, is probably the straightest path to a life of crime, only because it just embodies so much in terms of your background environment, what leads you to, you know, say substance abuse. You know, you get arrested for possession or for use, but with that comes all this other behavior. So prior to the establishment of KCDC, the court system really had to look for the community partners, which could not just support the numbers of trauma that we see in our defendants, but also it's not just you can just go to the run-of-the-mill psychologist to kind of deal with the defendants. You know, we at KCDC are forensic psychologists, so we're clinical psychologists by training, but understanding the court system, understanding the laws and statutes and how it applies. It's a very specialized field in psychology. So prior to KCDC, there really was no forensic center in Kane County, and even within the United States, we're pretty unique in terms of we are, other people do have diagnostic centers, other jurisdictions, but we are very comprehensive in terms of what we can do. I have over 100 specialized psychological instruments. We deal with juveniles and adult offenders, and we are equipped to answer any questions really forensically that the court needs, whether it's brain injury, neuropsychology, IQ testing, domestic violence, measures of aggression, measures of sexual violence, sexual predators, child pornography cases. Then we get into the whole aspect of juveniles. We're equipped to deal with that because we are designed to answer those questions, and trauma is just a theme threaded through that. So I think we are of service to that, and by our numbers and in terms of what we do in our annual report, which I will present next month to the Kane County Board, we do hundreds and hundreds of evaluations, over 1,000 intervention hours, over 1,000 of the specialty court hours, specializing just to serve Kane County and its defendants.
So Curtis, with that, it's two things. One is the specialty. So I always give this example. You can have a relationship, a husband and wife, where the husband is abusing the wife and it's domestic violence, and they could go to therapy. That therapy may not be effective because that therapist may not understand the dynamics of domestic violence or may not have the partner abuse intervention that is necessary for it. They have this specialty for our criminal justice system, and that's huge. Because when you just send somebody out there to get some sort of help or treatment, it doesn't mean it's the right help or treatment. The second part is finances, money, accessibility. The people who are coming through our system don't have insurance in all cases. They don't have the money to do it. They don't have the resources, even the basic transportation to get somewhere. Kane County has created a way to actually help people, and that's through the Diagnostic Center.
And they pay $0. Anyone who comes here for treatment, whether that's 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, we actually have one client whose case ended, I would say 12 years ago. My philosophy is once a customer, always a customer. I will never refuse them if you've been part of the system. Free therapy, all evaluations, because that's what we are paid to do. We don't take insurance. I don't even know the insurance world anymore because, and thank God I don't, because that's another headache. And I have said this to clients, and it's very kind of weird to say that a lot of clients tell me that the opportunity to actually tell about their trauma to us is the first time, whether you're 46 years old, first time they were actually able to talk about their trauma. And I have said to clients, you know what, getting arrested because you came here is the best thing that could have happened to you.
The time is 6:18 p.m. Thank you for watching this great discussion about PTSD and law enforcement. So to piggyback slightly about the efforts too, and this is something everybody can contribute to, are our efforts sustainable, and what do you guys need to continue the good work being done? Like, Pete, Jake, what do we need to continue the work being done?
You guys want to hit that first, and then I'll.
Yeah, I'd say continued collaboration. So Veterans Court is just a perfect example of that. So it's a newly born thing in 2018. So less than 5 years old here in Kane County, and we have the state's attorney, the public defender, our office, the Veterans Assistance Commission, the VA, all at the table to solve the veterans' issues and to help them through this time in their life to set them up for success later on. So having those community partners, leveraging those relationships to be able to help the veteran in our world is very key going forward.
Okay.
And I beyond the veteran world as well, like financially, whether it's funded or not, what's the cost if we go back to what we were, 10, 20, 30 years ago, where we just have to spend more money on more cops, more bars, more whatever, jail cells, or more whatever. What's the cost of that? The ROI of having these kind of types of interventions where you get people the help and ultimately try and get them into a healthy place where they're living their life and not going back to these kind of situations or just making the same mistakes over and over, or even worse, having them compound each other. I mean, that's where the value's at. One of the things that we run into a lot with the wellness world is that there's an upfront cost for employee assistance programs, right? But that's actually a great thing because, hey, now you're getting someone the help that they need, whether it be an addiction to alcohol or whatever. Now you're going to have a more productive employee. It just benefits the organization as well as that person's life, So it's a handshake. It's a good thing.
The ROI is very positive.
Positive, yeah, and it's necessary, I think.
Sure.
So first of all, I have to point out Jake here. He gets recognized north to south not enough in Kane County about the great work he does in the community. You know, we need to think about not just people in custody, but what he does for veterans and his division does for veterans in Kane County is just absolutely phenomenal. So huge kudos to him. I'm going to reflect on me being 4 years into this mission of doing something completely different in criminal justice and corrections. And 4 years now, after all the data tracking, after everything we've proven and after everything we've shown, your original question was, is this sustainable? And when I ran my head against the wall and I faced my most frustrations, it is absolutely ridiculous, antiquated thinking that is going to hold us back. Mm-hmm. Kane County has set a benchmark for where everybody else should be. This is why I now get to train 20 jails in California, 12 jails in Illinois. I'm now in Virginia, soon to be Alaska, training jails on what we do here right there. And all you had to do was think a little bit different. Same budget, same resources, different allocation of those budgets a bit, and just a mindset shift. And you actually reduce crime countywide by 16%. You drop recidivism, people coming back in our jail from 49% to 18%. You drop jail violence by 35%. And you save lives and you rehabilitate them and give them opportunities when they return. Yet still people say, I'm too soft on crime. Or this liberal tree-hugging sheriff is out there doing something different. And I say, look at the data, look at the people, look at the lives saved. This may be the hardest on crime we've ever been in Kane County with this new philosophy. Sorry that we're soft on people, but that is humanity, and that's what we should be doing.
Well, the data is in there for the Kane County State's Attorney. The data is in there in the annual report that also shows law enforcement effectively, to your point. So the numbers are definitely there when it comes to fighting crime.
Yes.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Doctor. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to say when Sheriff said soft on people, that's kind of the mindset of the community. It's actually not only compassion, but it's trauma-informed care, which says treat people with hope, dignity, and integrity. And your outcomes will be so much better. So what people perceive as soft, it's really not soft. No. It's seeing the potential in people and giving them the resources that they never had. You look at the backgrounds of where people come from, there is no way. You know, a lot of people, had to worry about walking 2 blocks to school without getting shot. Right. And here we are, the first time in their lives, whether they're 50 or 18 or whatever, we're giving them the resources we see as the criminal justice system. We see the hope in them, which the parents should have seen. So what people see soft, I would like that rephrased as seeing the hope and potential in human beings.
It's humanity.
Yes.
We spoke. So just a quick. A quick side note for the listeners too, and those who will play this later and listen to it. We did speak from two good points of view here: the veteran community and law enforcement. And Mr. Olson talked about how they overlap. The experiences overlap in many cases. So I'd like to talk at the moment. The time is 6:24. I'd like to talk about the experiences of trauma within the law enforcement community and dealing with it. We'll take a good few minutes on this. And then I'd also like to talk about the transitioning of a combat veteran to civilian life. Jake, I know that you'll have something to add to this as well. So I'd like to open that up for, I think, the trauma that's not seen. There's always a recruiter, very limited detailers who perhaps let you know about the negative experiences. So if you guys want to start with that, Sheriff, we'll start with you if you'd like to share a little bit.
You want to take the law enforcement side on that one?
Yes, please.
So there's three different components three primary components to PTSD and law enforcement. When you come on, you're coming in from a very cathartic, philanthropic, I want to serve everybody and do all the right thing position. You raise your right hand, you take the oath, and you step into this career, and you sincerely want to help people, and that's across the board with anybody in law enforcement, I believe. Soon you're hit with all of these policies your agency has, and internal fighting and internal politics, and you walked into this agency thinking that you were going to be one big happy family, but many law enforcement officers feel a lot of stress and pressure from internal politics within their own agency, and then they walk out the doors from roll call, and then they're responding to some of the most severe incidents that a human could imagine. And so you face day after day and trauma after trauma, and the fact that you'll go one day a week where you have just a crazy shift with the craziest incidents, and then it'll be 3 weeks of nothing, quiet law, and then boom, you're right back into something else, and you experience that over 20, 25, 30 years. And think about what that does to a body, to a heart, to a brain, to a physiology, to a psychology over that amount of time. So you have that pressure there as well. And you have shift work, and you have different days, and you have different days off than normal people. So what does that affect? The third component, your family. We see high divorce rates in law enforcement. I've been divorced twice, only once during my law enforcement career. I'm happily remarried now, thankfully. But you have that other component of just a different lifestyle at home than anyone else. So when you combine that all together and you compile it after 15, 20 years, what a normal person goes to, and I'm going to summarize it with this, what a normal person goes through in life, and they suffer a significant tragedy. Let's say their child is in a severe car accident. Sorry, I'm going to choke up a little bit on this one because this just happened yesterday with one of our people. Your child is in a severe car accident, and it is in ICU at Delnar, and one of their best friends loses his life in the car accident. And this is your son, and you're a detective who is assigned to investigate child sex crimes. So imagine the trauma of that every day, that you have to do that in your job. This happens to your family. So you have all of this weight on your back. And where do you go from here? What does life look like? What are the resources? Who's behind you? And all we've done for her and her family is just wrap them in love and support over the last 24 hours. But man, that could have been me.
Right.
Could have been any one of us. But yeah, the emotions you see here are 28 years of law enforcement, seeing this happen, seeing the experiences that everybody goes through, and now being the sheriff, caring for all these people like family. It's deep.
Well, we appreciate your service, Sheriff. As you know, we're friends and supporters of law enforcement.
I was going to do that.
Mr. Olson,
yes, sir.
The transition of a combat veteran to civilian life.
This is going to kind of relate to what Ron just said. From my experience, I was an officer in the National Guard, and I was in charge of 2 companies after a return of deployments. My first one from Iraq was my combat deployment, and I went from a combat deployment in Iraq right to my job in former law enforcement and right to the street. So that was not great. A lot of hard times, like kind of controlling yourself. You build a lot of walls around yourself when you see just a ton of trauma, and you have trouble kind of controlling containing yourself and controlling yourself and being as professional as possible. I actually did it for about another 1.5 years, and I finally just yanked myself in position. I got a desk job, and I went into financial fraud because I knew I was a ticking time bomb, and it was just hard. It's hard to recover from that. And to get into it with the transition, it was done poorly. And it's not the military's fault. I'm not trying to point fingers at anyone, but they had to get soldiers on the ground. So they took National Guard units, they put them into federal orders, and then they got done with them. They didn't have any bases or any barracks or anywhere to put everyone. They did a week or 2 at a demob site, and then I lied to everyone, said I was fine, and then got back into the field. 2 weeks vacation, right onto the uniform, running around with a sidearm and a shotgun, it's keeping the streets safe kind of a thing. And yeah, it was difficult. It wasn't a great area. I do have had a lot of friends who were in regular military service, and there is a lot more support for those people as they demobilize. It's a tough situation. Military is a big organization, and again, PTSD is from my experience, is very individual to the person. And when they sit there and they kind of cattle call you into a room and they tell us everything horrible that you saw, like it's not conducive to the person healing. And it's tough, and it takes a long time to get to the point where you actually can kind of start feeling like a human again and take those walls down and be like, listen, this hurts, but it's what I have to do so I can be a human again and interact with other humans and give a damn about it.
I've had the pleasure of speaking to law enforcement, and two things I've noticed in the community of law enforcement and veterans too, and this details the work of the Kane County court system, because these people may enter the system at some point in time. In the Vietnam era, healing, those guys talking about experiences, that was a select group of people who came back from an unpopular war and were treated unfavorably. They didn't get the accolades that the World War II generation got. So that's a sector of the population which society, we won't say failed them, but viewed them in a different lens. They didn't empathize with them. Kind of the same with law enforcement. For the law enforcement officer of the late 70s and 80s, what does decompressing after the job look like? And who are you going to talk to? Other officers. Who are the Vietnam guys talking to? That's who they're going to the VFW with. So there is a question here, and the question is that when we start to form that new addressing of trauma, are we also getting the new generation of young attorneys, young officers, and young vets? I mean, I don't know how recruitment's looking now in boot camp for guys joining the Marine Corps, but are the correct motions in place for the new generation filling these roles to serve the new people who are going to be in the system and deal with the system and return from deployment, or retire or move up the ladder? Anybody can take that. So many thoughts, but one of the things that I really liked what you said, that's going to segue into hopefully the answer to that, and I don't lawyer my way out of this, but you said that the World War II vets were respected for what happened, but not the Vietnam War. I want to talk about law enforcement, because law enforcement was energized, loved, respected, revered because of the war on drugs, because that was the mission that our legislators decided. And you've heard me talk about this before. Legislators created these laws. Police officers had a job to enforce these laws. Now, people hate them because of it. There's such an anti-police officer sentiment that's out there that now our officers are dealing with on a daily basis. Sheriff Hain could speak to this better, but he's having record numbers of retirement and people even just leaving, spending time here. I have that same issue with the people within my office, and I'm not just talking about the prosecutors, my advocates, my support staff. We pay them so little, but we expect so much, and they see so much. I mean, just a support staff person who has to print out a discovery on a homicide case, you're seeing awful stuff. So I think that there are people who can deal with that, but it takes a vision to do that. At the state's attorney's office, that was one of the visions I brought in. It's one of the reasons why we brought Vibe in, which is what Pete's company is a portion of, because it is an app that is designed to deal with people who have traumatic experiences in their job. It deals with mental health, physical health, encourages even stretching or yoga at your desk, has recipes for healthy food, something that will deter us all from going to the bar afterwards to deal with what it is that we felt.
But you need that vision, and you need that vision in the people who are in charge to make sure that we're focusing on how people leave every single day so that they come back every single day. So the only thing that I can answer for at this point is me as the state's attorney. I care about every single one of them. The situation that happened with the detective who also works for my office is horrific, and as a office we all bonded together to be there for that person and for that family member and for the family who will never see their kid again. We care enough to be that person that leaves our offices to go help every single one of us. So it's there, you just have to have the right leaders.
The time is 6:35 p.m.
I just wanted to, I think Jamie Master just brought up a great aspect of trauma that's, I think, not talked about a lot, which is called vicarious trauma. And I've just been doing kind of a systemic training on compassion fatigue. So even though the state's attorney or people in my department who are not out on the streets or not on the field, but the exposure from day to day, and you're inundated with traumatic details. We're looking at videos of, photos of crime scenes, which are very graphic. We're reading the police reports that detail, like say, child sexual abuse, torture in great detail, day in, and to put yourself and then speak to that person for 6 hours and hear all that. After a time on staff, and I think that's where sometimes the system, needs to grow, is to recognize that there is such a thing as compassion fatigue, and you can get vicarious trauma. Trauma, by definition, you don't have to directly experience it. You could be exposed. PTSD, by definition, is direct experience with or exposure to trauma.
Okay.
So for law enforcement, for example, the day-to-day job law enforcement has of being exposed to being on scene or hearing, victims in front of you, hearing the crying, seeing the details, that is enough by definition to make the PTSD. There's other criterion for that, but it's direct exposure, direct experience or exposure to real or threatened trauma. So even if someone comes up to you and points a gun at you, the threat of your life, that's enough. So trauma, I think, a lot is defined very narrowly, in terms of combat or this or that, but actually it's a very broad definition. And with KCDC, even, child abuse is trauma, sexual violence is trauma, natural disasters is trauma. Then we have historical trauma, 9/11, the images. If I say 9/11, chances are 100% we see the Twin Towers go down. And there's a different, and that's,
suicides go up after a national tragedy.
Absolutely.
It happens every time.
Pandemic. The trauma is not just vets or what we traditionally, not to take away from that, because that is certainly what brought trauma to the forefront, and there's no way you can even parallel the experience that vets experience. But trauma could be huge car accidents. Poverty in and of itself, people usually don't realize is traumatic, but if you think of poverty and the danger you face inside your house, in the streets, incarcerated or drug addicted parents, child abuse, child neglect, the kind of package that comes with that, over the course of your childhood, that's complex and chronic trauma. So I think this just kind of spurred me into just broadening the definitions of trauma for the viewers to just expand that.
The time is 6:39 p.m. I did want to ask about, and there's details specifically in the Kane County State's Attorney's annual report that details substances retrieved or taken off the street. But I did want to get in the context of PTSD, I did want to know from all of our panelists here what we've seen with substance abuse, how it is exacerbating the situation, what is it like in the veteran community, how are veterans using substances to cope, what you've seen among residents. If you guys like to take that? Anybody can start.
So with the work that I do, we use a lot of behavioral science and social sciences, and it's mainly kind of focused right now at understanding people's cognitive processes and then how it affects their behavior. And true to the United States, we use it to sell things to people. But there's a lot of lessons learned from that we can use to help kind of help people that are suffering from past traumas or post-traumatic stresses. And a lot of the times they just make unhealthy, completely irrational choices. And as I was saying before, it can compound. They can go from, hey, I got drunk. Hey, I went out for a drink and then all of a sudden I had 20. And then, hey, I just went and I drove a car. And hey, and that just compounds and compounds and compounds, all these unhealthy choices, and all of a sudden they're way worse off than they were just a few moments ago. So not only were they making irrational choices, now they have all these events that have piled up on them and lead to these issues, substance issues, to where they just kind of take their hands off the wheel, they're kind of self-hating and self-loathing, and they just let it go, and then it gets worse and compounds. If we can affect that and show them, and instead of trying to sell them something, actually educate them and go, listen, this is where you're being irrational and that's leading to an unhealthy and then bad events, we can replace that with rational thought, and then subtly, and it has to be for the person. Mindfulness is a very popular tool that's used, but mindfulness is generally associated with yoga, burning sage, and that's not everyone's bag.
Right.
It's not. So they're very important lessons, but we have to rebrand it so those lessons can be accepted by the person. So that's when we were talking about vibe. It's cooking, it's yoga, it's something for everyone. It's where they're going to get the lessons. It's not really. The lessons are the important part. The sage burning and everything else, that's great. I love me some yanni.
Right.
But it's.
But to the compounding of issues. If you started out to go have a beer, but you got drunk and got behind a vehicle, now you perhaps have a DUI. That could lead to you being arrested.
Financial problems.
Exactly. You've compounded things. So to get out of that, you may need to do a little
loss
more.
Loss of license, loss of job.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about stats. I mean, we're talking about people that are justice involved from trauma and substance abuse. The national average is that 85 to 87% of all people in custody suffer from some sort of addiction issue.
Correct.
Because 3 years ago, we started hard data tracking surveying in the Kane County Jail. Kane County is 90 to 91% of all people in our custody any given day suffer from an addiction issue. So bottom line, if that's the one, again, core common component that people are coming into custody for, why are you not treating that? It's called a correctional center for a reason. And that's why we've instituted all of those programs next door. And that is why over the last 3+ years, we have dropped the opioid overdose deaths of the formerly incarcerated in Kane by 89%. 89%. That is not a figure to shrug at. The fact that you didn't do anything before, now you're doing something, and you saved that many more lives is astronomical to me. And I'm not claiming credit for that. Was it my mindset? Was it my mission? Absolutely. But the work on the ground is everything from Lighthouse Recovery in St. Charles and all the wonderful work they do in there. Their medical director as well, who makes sure that everybody transitions out into the community with solid reentry. That's a component. And our diversion officers. And these were corrections officers in our facility before. When you're asking about, hey, how does the generation of law enforcement look when it comes to PTSD and a more sensitive attitude? Yeah, they're younger officers that are more sensitive to these issues, and these are the ones that are going to drive this forward. These are the new mindset, the new positions who are making all of this happen. So use the jail as a fusion center and your data point for all of your community's worst issues, and then treat from there and expand out from there.
That again is the vision, though. It's about looking at something differently. We have been trained to know that a person in that jail is a criminal. That's all that we know. We don't look at anything else. We don't look at how they got there, their history, their past, anything like that. We have zero empathy for them. But the problem is, that's why we failed in our system, and that's why changing what we're doing. I have prosecuted more police officers in my career than I ever want to. I know that every single one of those police officers signed up to do a job because they felt that that was their mission in life. I have prosecuted more vets than I care to ever describe to people. And they signed up to serve our country and to do something for us. But then something happened, and that is the trauma. Of all of the police officers that I've prosecuted, everything happened usually associated with an addiction that was a symptom of what they were dealing with. Because you know what we also told police officers? Don't get help. You are strong. You don't need any of this. If you go get help, maybe we'll take your gun away, which means then you can't be a cop anymore. And so as a result of that, their solution was go to the bar. Their solution, when the alcohol wasn't enough, was to escalate to drugs. I can't even tell you the arrogance that I've seen just being in this job alone when somebody tells me, well, I don't care why they did it. They were an officer and should have known better.
Oh, wait, they're human beings too, aren't they?
They are. And that's the problem, because we forget that everybody comes to us for a reason. I don't want to prosecute any more police officers or any more veterans because we as a system just stopped giving them the support that they needed.
And I think substance abuse and trauma go hand in hand. When you look at our drug courts, and you look at the people who are accepted into drug court, probably 80–90% of them have underlying trauma. And you can't expect full recovery without treating the underlying trauma. So for us at KCDC, we actually do individual therapy with drug court participants while they are also getting addiction, therapy and services, because you can't expect people to recover fully if they are going to go about in their daily lives and get triggered by a past event of trauma, or boy, I see him and he looks like my rapist. You can't. It goes hand in hand. You have to do it together at the same time. And I think also we are judgmental with whoever's in jail. What we are trained to ask is, what's wrong with you? You know better. You don't commit crimes. What's wrong with you? The better question is, and this is what we do in our psyche bells, the better question is, what has happened to you?
Right.
Not what's wrong with you. Tell me your story. What has happened to you to bring you to this day? Because you have to understand the human being in context. People don't wake up one day and become criminals.
Right.
People don't wait. You're not holding a baby in your arms saying you one day will be a heroin addict. What has happened in between? And I think that's where we have to slow down and understand people in context of their biopsychosocial factors and take that into consideration.
And there's this irrational argument that says punishment.
Yes.
And you look at some of these criminals and what they're living in, and they're punished. You look at their lives; they're not great. They're being punished. Giving them some help and getting them out of that. I mean, that's not a bad thing to do. What Sheriff Hain and what Jamie Moss are doing is the reasonable thing to do, and how to approach it, and to actually save the county money and then get a functioning society here.
Yeah, it works.
And it works.
I've I've looked at it as it definitely also shows where real, I think, criminality lies in the society too. I mean, I've never worn the uniform before or had the pleasure of working for the county in this fashion, but
Do you want to?
No. Do you want to? We'll fight.
But you hear people make the snide comments and negative comments and everything like that says that, hey, if you are not treating the guy who's detoxing like a criminal, he's more likely to commit criminality. I think that you're showing that we can reduce crime by addressing issues, and that shows you where the real crime is, what it looks like, who's committing it, the difference between the low-level offender, the repeat offender, as opposed to what the real threats are facing the people of Kane County. But I did want to read, I'm sorry, Sheriff, go ahead.
No, thank you.
I did want to read from I have a community question here I want to read. And this is also from the annual report. So on page 23 of the annual report, the specialty course, it says, to better address mental health concerns in Kane County, State's Attorney Monster asked the Kane County Board for funding, which it granted to add 2 dedicated assistant state's attorneys to the staff to handle mental health petitions. Does that mean that mental health cases and issues are rising in the county?
So yes,
Okay.
and because they weren't adequately dealt with. So
Okay.
now I want to explain our specialty courts of mental health court, drug rehabilitative court, and veterans court are what happens when somebody is arrested and then they're identified as high risk, high need.
Okay.
So they go into this program because these are intense probation officers, the judge has training, the prosecutor, the public defender. There's treatment throughout all this to help people. The two prosecutors that I asked for deal with our mental health petitions. So these are people who live in our community and because of something that's going on need to be hospitalized. But they are not in a position to voluntarily admit themselves, so we have to involuntarily do it.
Okay.
The state's attorney's office is the one who handles those petitions, and this is something that not a lot of people know about. We didn't have a dedicated prosecutors to do that. It was kind of just put in our civil division because they are bright, talented, amazingly smart people who know what they're doing, but already have a full caseload of things to do. So when I asked for this, it was because our numbers from DHS were so low into who was actually being committed and who was getting help. So people were languishing in our jails, not getting help because we weren't doing our part. That is something that I recognized when I came here because of everything that was happening. The involuntary commitment means they're going into a hospital. The involuntary administration of medication means they're getting the help that they need. Doctors everywhere in our Elgin Mental Health Center, our Armida in Aurora will tell you that that helps to stabilize people so that they can go back into the community and not end up in our jail or not hurt somebody.
The time is 6:51, so we've got 9 minutes left. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go around and I'd like to have each of our panelists here talk about how you can help any of the listeners or viewers if they have any information, how to contact you perhaps and get involved. We will put the links to everyone's respective, well, you all work together.
Yes.
So it'll be one nice link with bullet points of all the organizations here and how you can get involved and help. We'll start with you, Pete.
The thing that this might come as a surprise, being a vet and former law enforcement, but I too am divorced. One of the things that my ex-wife did, though, and I'll always be grateful for, is she kind of identified that I was going through troubles when I got back from and when I was on the job. And she knew like I wasn't going to open up to her, so she kind of arranged a situation with a really good friend of mine who lived far away, and it was helpful. And just kind of having that outlet, someone that you trust and you can kind of share things with. And it may not be you, it may be a favorite aunt or uncle or parent or a friend or something like it was for me, but having someone there for someone, if you're identifying, someone you care about has these exhibiting these signs, just getting them someone they can talk to and trust is very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing. So know that help is out there. Know that it's okay to not be okay. And know where to get that help. And that help for veterans starts with our office in Kane County. We don't do it all by any means. We have a lot of partners in the court system, at the VA, in the state of Illinois. So we can go through and help triage what that issue is, what those issues are, and get you to the right folks for help. And that office for us, right downtown Geneva, 630-232-3550. And if we can help in any way, we will. If we need to refer you out, we do that as a warm handoff.
2 years of doing this, I've always been able to respect the guy who knows the number to his own thing. He knows it by heart. I love it, man. I mean, cut y'all sheriff. I'm sorry. I love that.
I was giving a plug that they're the best.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So we have a state's attorney's website, kanecountystatesattorney.com. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have everything you can think of. What I want people to know is that as long as I am in office, I will look at every single person individually. I can't even tell you that since being elected, how many families of defendants I have actually met with, because when I talk to them, I say, all I want to do is get them help, and I mean it. And it's a surprising concept because that's not what people see. I mean, all of our shows on television have really ruined what prosecutors really intend to do, because it looks like we are just lock them up and throw away the keys.
Right.
They also have much better suits than I do, which makes me a little angry.
You know, Law and Order, they solved the case in an hour.
It's
Holy
amazing.
cow.
How
Like,
quickly
whoa,
that thing gets to trial.
gun trafficking in an hour? That's crazy.
Murder in an hour? Done.
Wow, John.
So, but that is what we are going to do, and I have a great partner in Sheriff Hain in terms of law enforcement, with Dr. Tsang, with Jacob Zimmerman, and with Pete in our community. But that's what we're going to continue to do. So I want people to understand that even if their family member or they are involved in law enforcement, it doesn't mean the end result is going to be a conviction, jail, and prison. That's not how we operate here in Kane County. Now, there are people who are going to go to jail or prison, and that's sometimes because they are so much of a danger to our community that there's nothing that we can do. That is what we do. But we have a different philosophy for the people who are committing crimes because of mental health, substance use, or lack of resources, which is why we created Illinois' first ever pre-arrest diversion program.
PADS, that's right.
PAD, and this thing is amazing because what it is it gives law enforcement the opportunity to do the warm handoff to a case manager. So what that basically means is that a person is committing a crime, and we know it's for a reason on a low level, nonviolent. And for those people who keep saying that all we're doing is we're putting all the felons and giving them a break, it is the people who are possessing a drug because they're using, and they're using because of a reason. Now, these case managers, free of charge, because this is grant funded, can help them get what it is that they need. We have a 100% success rate right now in just helping people get out of this system. That is what I will do as the state's attorney the entire time that I am here, is just keep finding better ways to get people help to get them out of this system.
And it works.
And it works.
Dr. Tsang?
One thing I want to tell the viewers is to convey that you are not alone. If you or someone you love is suffering from depression and anxiety, actually those rates are higher than heart attacks and strokes put together, and it's actually more treatable, contrary to urban myth. The treatment is out there. Your quality of life can change. And although we are not a walk-in mental health facility, we only, serve defendants. However, you can call me and email me, and I am connected to all mental health facilities, and I have a ton of resources. So 630-262-4483 is my direct line. You call that line. You could Google Kane County Diagnostic Center. My email will come up, my name will come up, the phone number will come up. I will hook you up to anything that you need. So I will serve the community in that capacity.
Thank you very much. Sheriff Hain?
A couple of years ago, we started the Special Victims Team at the Sheriff's Office. And so it's a combination of intensely and specifically trained detectives for juvenile crimes, domestic violence crimes, and senior crimes, and they're supported by 2 social workers as well. So it's also a co-responding model. So we hire 2 full-time social workers, and they're also backed up by social worker interns. People may try to find mental health support right now and realize that it's taking them 3 to 4 months even to get their first appointment. And so what I want people to realize in Kane County, and our larger municipalities like Elgin and Aurora, they have social worker programs as well that people can plug into, but a lot of our smaller towns and unincorporated areas don't realize that the Sheriff's Office has this asset available to them. So if somebody's feeling like they want immediate mental health support, again, it's a co-responder model, or they can just activate one of our social workers by a phone call or an on-site visit by calling our dispatch center, which is 630-232-8400, or what's the other phone number? You said it earlier today.
I said
911.
Oh, 911.
It's the same people.
I'm like, I do know my phone number.
It's the same people that answer the phone, whether you call that non-emergency line or
that was a
911,
funny joke earlier.
to make that request. But also you can get directly in touch with me if you have additional questions, or you want just a private link up with a social worker. If you go to kanesheriff.com, just click on the sheriff link. My email, phone number's up there. I respond to every phone call and every email. So feel free to reach out and we'll plug you into mental health support. If you need help, if you know someone that needs help, or somebody that's showing signs that they're in crisis, say something so we can do something about it.
The time is now 6:59 p.m. I think this is a great place to in this wonderful discussion, public safety and the criminal justice system, PTSD. I want to thank again our panelists, Kane County Sheriff Ron Hain, Dr. Alexandra Tsang, Director of the Kane County Diagnostic Center, State's Attorney Jamie Mosser, Jacob Zimmerman, Superintendent of the Kane County Veterans Assistance Commission, and Mr. Pete Olson, President of Level 6 Wellness, NFP, and Operation Iraqi Freedom Combat Veteran. I have been your host, Curtis Spivey. I'm proud to moderate this great debate. And we look forward to seeing you all at the next one. Thank you very much for tuning in. Take care of yourself and each other.
Thank you.